So I'm aware that this lighting is borderline offensive right now, but this is kind of the best I can do. I've got a spotlight freaking shining at me from the ceiling, I've got another lamp here, and I've got a tiny bedroom lamp that I've decided to bring into the living room because it's getting dark outside because I procrastinated for too long and now there's no light for me to film a video. So this is where I'm at right now. Anyway, hi everyone, welcome to my monthly wrap up. If I look a bit funny, I had a bit of a panic attack last night, so my eyes are swollen, but I've tried to work with it and whatever. This is my wrap up for October. I managed to get through 7 books. Yeah, 7 books this month, which isn't too bad considering I was in a slump for half of it and then Spookathon happened and then a ton of stuff happened in real life and yeah, I had a lot going on basically, but I still read 7 books. First of all, I'm going to start with the statistics as usual, and then I'll go into the books themselves and my thoughts on them. I'll try to remember to leave a timestamp down below so you can skip the statistics if you're not interested. They usually take about a minute, so don't worry if you'd rather I get straight to the books. In October, I read 7 books, like I said, which added up to 2,476 pages. This is my second lowest reading month of the year so far, so I'm a little bit disappointed. I could have done better, but I didn't. That said, my average rating was 3.8, which is joint highest with probably like June or something, I'm not sure. So I'm really happy with that. It does mean that I enjoyed the majority of these 7 books that I read. I gave 0 books 5 stars, 5 books 4 stars, 2 books 3 stars, 0 books 2 stars and 0 books 1 star. I DNF'd 3 books. I'm going to do a separate video on these, but the ones that I DNF'd were The Wicked Deep, The Boy on the Bridge and Skyward. I read a mixture of different genres. I read 2 non-fiction books, 1 fantasy book, 1 post-apocalyptic book, 2 thrillers and 1 horror. And weirdly, 6 of the books that I read were adult fiction and 1 was YA. This is very unusual for me. Normally it's a bit of a balance, but for some reason it was different this month. So now onto the books that I read. I was going to go in some sort of order, but I've written them down randomly. So here we go. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. I look so tired, but what can you do? First one I want to talk about is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This is non-fiction. It's about the Golden State Killer who was recently caught but hadn't been at the time this book was written and published. Michelle, the author, she spent years looking into this case. She was fascinated by it. She wanted to see him caught. Unfortunately, she died a couple of years ago before this book was published and also before the Golden State Killer was caught. So she never got to see that, but she has done a really good job here of talking about the case. I did only give this one 3 stars. It was a bit of a disappointment because I was expecting to go very in depth, but instead it felt a bit disjointed, and I think that's probably because the author died partway through writing it. You could very much tell that there were different people involved in writing this book. Some of it just had no character or personality to it. I enjoyed reading about some of the cases, but to be honest, they seem to pick and choose which ones to include in this book, and I don't really see why they chose the ones that they did. So in summary, I did enjoy it, but it wasn't amazing. I then read Vengeful by Schwab. I also reviewed this on my channel. If you want a slightly more in-depth review, go and check out the video. I gave this one 4 stars. It's the sequel to Vicious, and I really enjoyed it, obviously. I did appreciate the inclusion of the new female characters. There were a couple more who I really enjoyed reading about, and I do think that Vicious suffered from not having strong female protagonists, at least ones that were on the same level as Victor and Eli, because Serena and Sydney definitely weren't. I then read This Is Going to Hurt, which is another non-fiction book. I gave this one 4 stars. It's written by a guy who was training to be a doctor, or who was a doctor for the NHS, and he basically talks about his old job from when he started as a junior doctor all the way up to whatever he eventually became before quitting. I thought it was really interesting. My friend lent me the book and now Quill is reading it as well because I recommended it to him. It's so funny, really engaging, and just really entertaining and insightful. And I also really enjoyed his open letter to the Minister of Health, because unfortunately we have someone in the Conservative Party who wants to destroy and privatise and take money away from the NHS, which would be a stupid idea because then we'd end up like the US. But anyway, I'm not going to get political. And then we got into the Spookathon, and for my first book I read Bird Box. This is one that I've been raving about for ages. I've been really excited to get to it. Ever since I saw it in a couple of people's videos, they listed it as their favourite horror or favourite thriller of all time. So I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. And this was great. I gave it 4 stars. I almost gave it 5, but I couldn't just because of the ending, and I do wish it was longer because it's only about 300 pages. So this is a horror novel set in our world. It follows the point of view of this woman whose name I can't remember. Mallory. This kind of situation or disease or occurrence happens in Russia, and then it spreads over to Alaska and then over to the United States. And what it means for people is that they see something outside and it causes them to go crazy and also causes them to kill others and themselves. The thing is, anyone who has survived up until now doesn't know what's going on because they obviously haven't seen whatever it is out there. They haven't gone mad, they're still completely sane, kind of. So they haven't been driven mad by this thing, they don't know what to look out for, they just can't go outside without blindfolding themselves. And the whole book is told through 2 different timelines. The first one is Mallory trying to take her 2 children to a safe house. She has to blindfold herself and her 2 kids, and they have to travel down the river to this safe house without being able to see anything. And then there are also flashbacks about the start of the epidemic or the situation, and we follow Mallory as she and her sister kind of prepare themselves and fortify their house, and then when Mallory meets other people who are also trying to survive and stuff like that. I really, really enjoyed this. I would highly recommend it. I would probably give it 5 stars if it was a little bit longer and if the ending had been slightly less. It wasn't even open-ended, I can't describe it as that. I wanted more of a resolution. I wanted to know more about the things that they were seeing, but realistically that wouldn't have worked. I think it works perfectly the way that it did, but this is just something that I wanted. I then read Dry, which is Neal Shusterman's newest book. This is kind of an apocalyptic book in which water in California runs out. The neighbouring states break their contract and stop providing Southern California with water, and the local government weren't prepared for this, so they're no help at all and people have to try to survive. It's a YA book and it follows a group of teenagers who are separated from their parents for various reasons, and they have to try to find safety and most importantly find water. I gave this one 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I read it in a single day, I think almost in a single sitting. It was absolutely terrifying as well because climate change is something that absolutely terrifies me, and it should probably scare you as well. I realise I'm getting quite political in this video. I don't mean to, it's just the books that I've been reading have driven me to this. So anyway, now I just feel very conscious about water waste. So the book did its job because I feel like this is something that Neal Shusterman was trying to get across to the readers. And then finally the 7th book I read was The Lost Man by Jane Harper. This is her newest book. It's only out in Australia at the moment or as an ebook from Amazon if you're in the UK. I'm not sure about the US. Jane Harper is the author of The Dry and the other book, Force of Nature. I read those 2 during Dewey's 24-hour readathon earlier this year. Loved them. The Dry was fantastic. It's set in Australia during the drought. The atmosphere was just brilliant, so I had to pick up her other books. I pre-ordered this ebook because I just needed to get my hands on it, and it did not disappoint. I loved it so much. I gave it 4 stars, but that's because it wasn't as thrilling as I was expecting. It was more of a mystery than a thriller. It's mostly about 3 brothers. One of them is found in a very shallow grave on their property. These brothers all live on farms in the Australian outback. The brother that died wandered off, it seems, from his car and died of dehydration. So there's a whole mystery surrounding that, and then also it looks into the relationship between the 2 brothers and their partners and also their mother and their father. I thought it was really, really well done. I liked the relationship stuff a lot more than the mystery itself. I only had a few theories and none of them were correct. I got to the end and I was like, wow, yeah, I probably should have seen that coming. But really, it was more about the relationships for me. I do have to warn you about the domestic abuse. The brother's father in the flashbacks is incredibly abusive. He hits his sons and he hits his wife, and he's manipulative and angry and aggressive, and it was awful to read about. It made me very, very uncomfortable because this is something that doesn't really sit well with me. But I do think that Jane Harper dealt with it very respectfully, and I still really, really enjoyed the book. So I would highly recommend that. I gave it 4 stars. And that is it for my October wrap up. It was a bit smaller than I was hoping it was going to be, but I did read some really good books, so I'm happy with that. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll speak to you in my next video. Bye!